For those in the audience, we're just waiting for a document to upload during the work session. So all people in the audience will be able to see it. So. We're good? Thank you, Ms. Ray. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Griffin Spalding County Board of Education work session, 1/10/23 at a little after 4. We apologize for running a little late. We had a personnel hearing prior to this work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if you would please place all electronic communication devices on silent or vibrate. That would be very helpful. And we'll start with our prayer from Mr. Doss, and I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Let us pray. Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity, Father, Lord, to make decisions on behalf and hear discussions and presentations, Father, Lord, on behalf of our students. I pray, Father, Lord, for all Griffin Spalding County residents. I pray for our administrators, our teachers, most of all our students and their parents. Lord, bless this time and our decision making. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, we have adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion? All right, we have a motion, 2 motions. No, just kidding. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, 4-0. And for the record, Dr. Simmons was notified by Ms. Cook that if she's here at all, she'll be a little late. So, next on the agenda is the election of board officers. And before we do that, I just wanted to as I leave the chair position, I just wanted to thank my peers and my colleagues and all of you in the audience this has been an honor of a lifetime to be chair of this board. That was my goal, is try to become chair within the first 4 years of my first term. All of us that were reelected in May have just started our second terms, and I'm still honored to be here. So I just wanted to thank my colleagues and Mr. Shepard and Elizabeth and their support. It's been it's challenging at times, but there's a lot to learn. The learning curve is pretty big, but I thank you for your support. All right, the election of board officers. We need to elect a board chair and a vice chair.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Mrs. Cynthia Brown for the position of board chair.
All right, I'll second that. All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand for Mr. Brown to become chair. 4-0.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Will Doss as vice chair for the term coming up.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, that's pretty simple. Thank you. I will vacate the chair. Mr. Brown will take over. Hold on to your seat belts.
Thank you, Ms. McDonough, for your dedication and work.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wanted everyone in the room to know when I spoke to Centel earlier today, I said, today's your day, and I'm just so proud for him, and I'm so proud for us, because the work that he does, this is his niche. This is his thing. He's really good at it. So thank you, Centel. I've learned a lot from you, and I will continue to do so.
Amen.
Can you bring my water?
Ms. McDonough, you see that we're the bookend, so we got to keep this thing together.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Right. No, we're not changing shirts.
Let me get a picture for your mama right quick.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Leader.
You gonna get one of me way down here? I don't have any friends, nobody to talk to.
I at least got Elizabeth and Miss Stone.
Just kidding. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to my colleagues for your vote of confidence to make me the chair for 2023. I look forward to much collaboration. Look forward to us continuing to keep the pace to make this the best school district in the state of Georgia. All right, executive session. We are going to the executive session to discuss, deliberate upon appointment of personnel, and to discuss and deliberate upon the periodic evaluation and rating of the superintendent. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved by Leader Holmes of the 3rd, seconded by
Second.
McDonald of the 5th. It's been properly motioned and seconded to go into executive session. We are ready to call for the vote. Please vote by raising your right hand. 4-0 vote. The public is at ease, and the board will go into executive session. All right, the board is now done with executive session. The Board of Education has finished executive session. We're ready to continue our work session. What is the pleasure of this board?
Make a motion that we come out of executive session.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dawson II and seconded by McDonald V. It has been properly motioned and seconded to come out of executive session to continue the work session. We are ready for the vote. Please vote by raising your right hand. 4-0, therefore is passed. We are back in work session. Consent agenda. The order of business that we are taking up now is the consent agenda. On your agenda, it is item number 7. At this time, what is the pleasure of this body for the consent agenda?
So move that we accept it as presented, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been motioned by Holmes of the 3rd and McDonald of the 5th. So it's been properly motioned and second. We are ready for the roll call vote. The chairman will use his privilege to establish a roll call vote. When your name is called, please respond with your vote. Doss.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Cook. McDonald.
Yes.
Brown. Yes. The consent agenda has been approved 4-0, receiving a majority board vote, and is therefore passed. Presentations and discussions. The order of business. Before we go into presentations and discussions, I would like to pass it over to the superintendent to congratulate Mr. Anthony Akins on his new position outside of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize about that.
You good, bro?
As you know, Mr. Anthony Akins was recently appointed superintendent of Crawford County Schools. As such, if my memory serves me correctly, I think he officially assumes that responsibility effective tomorrow, which makes today his last day as a Griffin Spalding County School System employee. My memory serves me correctly. I believe that brings to a culmination more than 15 years of experience and service in our school system, and I wanted to afford this board the opportunity, if they had some, parting remarks and well wishes for Mr. Akins.
Does he have to slip out already? He had already left. I think just because it's being recorded, I would like to go ahead and make just a couple of remarks.
Go ahead, Mr. Doss.
I had the opportunity to work with Anthony Akins over the years as a youth pastor when he was principal at Jordan Hill, and some endeavors there, obviously, since I have been a board member working with him as a cabinet, and appreciate his loyalty and dedication that he has given to this system. He and his wife both have been over and above as far as their giving and abilities here at our system, and we will forever be grateful for that. And we are better because that they were here at that time. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Are there any other comments from the floor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I also would like to publicly thank Mr. Akins. He's never not answered a text. I feel like I'm talking to Dr. Sauce. He's never not answered a text. He's never not answered an email. He's always gotten back to me very timely when I would always say it's not a 911, just when it's convenient for you to answer. I wanted to say all the best to you, Anthony, as you take on a new role down in Crawford County. All the best to Miss Akins, his wife, who worked in HR for many years. They've done a lot for this system. They've done a lot for employees. They've done a lot for students, and they've done a lot for support personnel. And I just wanted to publicly say thank you, Anthony. I'll come down to see you. Actually, I learned that a teacher I used to teach with up in Forsyth County is a teacher at the middle school down in Crawford County. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, thank you, Anthony and Edna. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Leader?
Mr. Leader would like to say, myself, it's been a long, good relationship with, I just call him Brother Anthony, and he won't be too far out of reach. Mr. Wheeler, our frat brother, is the chairman down there, so our arms reach way down in Crawford County, where we can keep an eye on Anthony. So I'm not going to say goodbye. I'll just say I'll see you later. Mm-hmm. And but I've always enjoyed working with Anthony because I think he has a similar DNA as I do. He's a kind of laid-back person, fun-loving person, and we've always worked well. And I have to echo what Mr. McDonald said. I've never tried to contact him, and he didn't get back with me. I can never say that that has occurred. And actually, he goes above and beyond doing things and has done things that really wasn't in his repertoire, his job duties. But because it was something that benefited students, someone in the community, Anthony was always a stellar guy. So we're going to miss him, but we always wish those that excel, we always wish them well, because if we don't have anyone to advance here, then we're not doing our jobs as preparing leaders. So it's a sad day, but it's a happy day. Amen. Thank you.
I think it's also important to know we won't have to see his license plate driving around town. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Go Dogs.
Awesome. Also, I echo the same sentiments as my colleagues. To Mr. Akins, congratulations on your new role as Superintendent of Schools in Crawford County. Wishing you the best on your educational and professional journey. So this time, Board, I ask that we stand and give Mr. Akins a round of applause.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
All right. The next order of business that we will entertain is presentations and discussion. On your agenda, it is item number 8. Item 1 under 8 is FY22 Audit Review, Hope Pendergrass of Malden and Jenkins. We'll ask that our CFO, Mr. Byron Jones, will introduce our presenter today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board members. I'm really happy to present Hope Pendergrass to you tonight. She is a partner with Malden and Jenkins, and just for a little context, you'll remember in the spring we did a competitive proposal for audit services. Malden and Jenkins was the most responsive bidder. Actually saved us close to $15,000 a year on our audit. We signed a 3-year proposal, and that includes an annual comprehensive financial report, which she may allude to that for just a second, where we do above and beyond what's required by law in some of our statistical analysis. And that also causes us to have to report our items to the government in 6 months, not 9 months. So we met all those timelines. This is really the final step today. We have one more small transmission after she is finished, and then we'll finish with that. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. I believe you have in front of you 2 documents. One of them is a very thick document. I promise we're not going to go through it page by page. We did that in summary form yesterday with Ms. McDonald and Mr. Doss. So I am going to go over what it's kind of a small summary document that's spiral bound that you should have in front of you, and is also on the screen as well, called the Auditor's Discussion and Analysis. But before I go into that, I do want to just give y'all a brief kind of summary overview. The most important thing that you need to know is that as the auditor, we're required to opine on your financial statements to say whether or not they're fairly stated, and we were able to give what's called an unmodified report. That's the best that you can get. So congratulations to management and the board for its leadership being able to do that. As Mr. Jones alluded to, you all also do prepare what's called an annual comprehensive financial report. That's above and beyond the basic requirements. And you submit that to 2 national organizations, the Government Finance Officers Association, as well as the Association of School Business Officials. And you do receive an award for that. So we are hopeful and feel confident that this current ACFR will also be a recipient of those 2 awards. There's only a handful of school districts in the state that prepare this document, and there's even smaller subset that prepare and present it to both organizations for their certificates. So just want to point out that y'all are going above and beyond and doing something that not every school district is doing. So you all are to be commended for that. As far as a quick financial analysis, your fund balance looks really good as of June 30th. You know, when you think about what your fiscal year end is, with it being June 30th, right before taxes come in, that's kind of what should be kind of your leanest time of year. You all had approximately about 20 weeks of fund balance, which is very strong. So I know y'all have a lot of initiatives and you're going to be considering some items today, but just keep in mind that that is very strong. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to have such a strong fund balance to carry you into the fall until those tax receipts start coming in October and November. As far as your single audit, in addition to the financial statement audit, we are required to report on and evaluate your compliance with the federal grants that you all receive. For this year, you had approximately about $32.7 million in federal expenditures, and we looked at approximately 60% of that, and again, found that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed. So congratulations to you on that. So this, what's kind of on the screen right now, if you'll go back to the beginning, or I can, I think. Okay. So the beginning of this document just kind of gives you some information about Malden & Jenkins. We're a large regional firm. We work with about 75 school districts throughout the Southeast, but we serve over 650 governments. A lot of this information in the beginning just kind of goes over what your annual comprehensive financial report is, and then also some of the required communications that we as auditors are required to communicate to you all. I'm not going to go over that in detail. But we have two graphs here. One of them kind of talks about this is your general fund, this is where the money came from. So you'll see that a good portion of it comes from the state. And then this second pie graph kind of shows you where the money went. Again, a large chunk of it goes to instruction, which is kind of as you would think it would be. We do have 4 recommendations that are included further in this document. I'm not planning on going into those in detail. But if you have any questions about any of those recommendations, they're not anything that I guess gives me pause or anything that we don't see at school districts around the state. But those are some things that we would recommend for improvement. The last part of the document kind of goes through and talks to you about some of the upcoming standards. GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that's the entity that kind of sets the financial standards that you have to comply with for financial reporting. They are very busy, and they're always giving us something new to consider. So we just kind of like to include that information for you all to consider as part of your strategic planning going forward as you prepare for your year-end closeout in June and July and going forward. And that's pretty much everything that I kind of had to summarize. I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Board members, we've heard the FY22 audit review from Hope Pendergrass of Malden & Jenkins. Are there any discussion and questions at this moment?
Yeah, I don't have anything right now, but I would like to lay the foundation that if we do at a later point, once we look through this, that we'll be able to ask questions.
Absolutely, and also we'll be able to utilize Mr. Jones to answer any of those questions, and of course he is the liaison between the district and the company. So board members, you have it, please review it and reach out to Mr. Jones if you have any other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to come today.
All right, we are now on, still under presentations and discussions, item 8. We're going to 8.2, Policy EE, Food Service Management, first reading by our Director of Nutrition, Mr. Robert Bow Wow Wow Yippee-Yo Yippee-Yay Wheeler.
Mr. Chairman, Board, Superintendent Dr. Simmons, the district is presenting the revision of Policy EE, Food Service Management, for first reading. The district will post the Policy EE, Food Service Management, into Assembly to receive input from board members and stakeholders for 30 days. The policy will be brought to the next business meeting for second reading and final board adoption.
All right, board members, you've had a chance to review Policy EE. Are there any questions at this moment for Mr. Wheeler? All right, thank you so much, Mr. Wheeler.
Wait,
hold on, Mr. Leader.
Before Mr. Wheeler goes, Dr. Simmons, and I think, I don't know if you all read your email, but Mr. Wheeler know how passionate I have been about a certain project, and what he gave me to just review does my heart make it leap, skip a beat, because I think it's important. And I thank you. I just want to publicly thank you for what you've done. Just reading this gives me goosebumps to know what this is going to do for our scholars in the days to come. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I know the staff is very pleased to see this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wheeler. All right, 8.3, Policy KI, Free Materials Distribution in Schools, first reading from our very own All-American baseball player and committed Director of Communications, Mr. Adam Pugh.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Brown and Board of Education. The district is presenting the revision of Policy KI, Free Materials Distribution in Schools, for first reading. The board and district are collaboratively reviewing and updating all board policies. At this time, the following minimal adjustments to the policy are recommended. Thank you.
All right, board members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this particular policy?
No, sir.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Pugh.
My pleasure.
All righty, next one, Policy JBB, Entrance Age, first reading, coming from the lady with much fortitude. Shout out to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, who will be celebrating 110 years on January 13th. Our Director of Student Services, Dr. Lisa Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, Superintendent Simmons. The district is presenting the revision of JBB Entrance Age for first reading. Board policy JBB Entrance Age is recommended for revision at this time in order to provide correct language for early enrollment as well as maximum age enrollment, both under the special education program.
All righty, thank you so much. Board members, are there any questions regarding this policy?
No, sir.
All righty, thank you so much. Dr. Moore?
Thank you.
All righty, next policy under item 8.5, policy DFA, local tax revenue, coming from Mr. Moneybag Yo himself, the coin getter, our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Byron Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board again. The district's presenting a revision of policy DFA, local tax revenues, for first reading. This board policy is undergone a review to become consistent with our current operating environment. Minor changes are being made to revise the policy to be more compliant with other district policies. For this one and the subsequent policy, we're just moving language to a regulation standpoint and revising the policy down to a paragraph. That's the only changes. So for this policy, are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. As Mr. Jones has
Mr.
presented,
Chair?
are there any questions at this moment for this particular policy? Ms. McDonald, you are now recognized.
Mr. Chair, thank you. This has nothing to, Mr. Jones, this has nothing to do with the land bank, is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, no ma'am.
Okay, and this is not, is this an individual basis or is this just in total?
This policy really has more to do with the board's authority to enter into tax abatements, which are normally a partnership with the county and the city. And normally in my history, it takes a three-pronged approach to attract the industry, and this is just talking about you have the right to agree or not agree to be a part of that.
Okay.
And that'll be in the regulatory language that we actually struck from the policy.
Okay.
So that'll be listed on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McDonald, board members, I think the importance of that will be in the regulation, because in some ways there will be nuances in which you will look at some things a little bit differently without necessarily having to violate or questioning if you're violating your policy. It will give you a little bit more flexibility as opposed to having to strictly adhere to the policy. So that's the reason for that change. Thank you, Mr.
All right, are there any other discussion as it relates to the presentation?
No, sir.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jones. You can go ahead and do policy DG, depository of funds. First reading.
The district is presenting the revision of board policy DG, depository of funds, for first reading. Board policy DG has also undergone a review to become consistent with our current operating environment. Minor changes such as moving to a regulation are being made to revise the policy to be more compliant. So the district will post the policy for 30 days on assembly, after we'll bring it back for board approval.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard Mr. Jones' second presentation on first presentation was depository funds. Is there any questions and discussion? Hearing none. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. All right. Policy BC, board meetings, first reading. Dr. Donna Warren, it's kind of cold in here. There must be some alphas in the atmosphere.
Good afternoon, board members. I want to bring before you policy BC as it relates to board meetings. We made a slight revision to write in the policy that the slate of meetings will be determined in December for the following year. Minor revision to the policy.
All right, board members. We've heard the presentation from Dr. Warren on policy BC. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, thank you so much, Dr. Warren. Let's move to policy BHA, BOE member conflict of interest. First reading, Dr. Donald Warren.
Yes, sir. We also reviewed policy BHA as it relates to board member of education conflict of interest. First reading. At this time, there are no revisions that are suggested to this policy.
All right, thank you, board members. You've heard the presentation. Are there any discussions at this point? Hearing none, thank you so much, Dr. Warren. Moving on to policy IFCD, school volunteers. First reading, Dr. Donald Warren.
Yes, sir. We also reviewed policy IFCD for school volunteers, and there are no recommended changes to this policy.
All right, board members, are you any discussion?
I do, just a couple. Thank you,
Madam Chairman Emerita, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the only thought I had, Dr. Warren, when I read this was, I believe that to volunteer in School A as a parent, as part of a group from a church, there have to be background checks. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So anyone off the street, so to speak, will have a background check, whether it's from a church event. I know we have out at Sun City, we have the Parent Academy, which is comprised of 15 to 20 people that work with Atkinson. All of those have had background checks to be able to go into the school and do that.
I'll have to check into that and get back with you. According to regulation, they do an online application and go through a background check. I don't have a list of all the volunteers in front of me. I can check and get back with you on tomorrow.
Because I know if you go through Spalding Collaborative through Ms. Rhodes, I know you do the background check. But we have several people out in Sun City with different clubs that do work in our schools, and I just wanted to double check that because I think it's important.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Superintendent Simmons, will you mind responding to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McDonald, it is our expectation that background checks are conducted. What we may not do is do those on an annual basis.
Correct.
So I think that's what Dr. Warren is going to verify. But I think it's important to know that despite a person wanting to volunteer, there is a process. And for the safety and well-being of our students and our staff, we do conduct those background checks. We'll verify whether or not we are able to keep up with those things on an annual basis, provided that a person continues to volunteer on an annual basis.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Warren. All right. Is there another one?
Yes.
Okay, policy JGF-GB, concussion management.
Yes, we reviewed policy JGF-GB for concussion management for first reading, and several revisions were made. We included an introduction to the policy, as well as streamline the regulation to align both with GHSA and the National Federation of High Schools. We're dealing with concussions of our students.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the board, you have heard the presentation on policy JGF-GB, concussion management. Are there any questions or discussion?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, you're recognized. Or Madam Chair Emerita, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Warren, in light of what we all witnessed last Monday night at a national football game with regard to the player that had a cardiac arrest, I want to be sure that I know that there are certified athletic trainers at the high school level in Griffin Spalding. Is that correct? My question to you is, what is available to our student athletes at the middle school level that participate in extracurricular sports as far as timely health care in an emergency, as we all witnessed just about a week ago? I mean, is there a physician on call? Is there a physician there? Is there an athletic trainer there? I just want to be sure that we that we protect the middle schoolers that go out and play football as we would protect the high schoolers that go out and play football or soccer or.
I would like to ask Dr. Moore, Director of Student Support Services, to answer that question.
We have slated to have a nurse at every game for the middle school, and we also have our ADs that we checked this summer to ensure that they were all properly working.
Additionally, our athletic trainers at the high school level go down to the feeder middle schools to assist as needed.
But as needed means after there's been an emergency, right?
It could be proactive or reactive.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's good to know, Dr. Moore, that there is a nurse on call. Just someone with a medical background that can make a split-second decision like was made that we all witnessed on TV. So, thank you.
Dr. Moore, how many of the coaching staff, I know at one time, they all were at least certified in CPR.
Right.
Is that still ongoing? Okay, just wondering.
Dr. Moore, will you stand, please?
We did 2 classes as well last week.
Okay, great.
All right, board members, are there any other discussion or questions that you may have?
I got to put a plug in it because that was my profession.
Go ahead, Leader Holmes.
For those of you who are here, they tell you, and the instructor, when they teach a class, they tell the students that the person they're most likely to do CPR on is going to be someone they know, a family member. So I encourage you to learn CPR because those are the people that you most likely going to have to do CPR on, your family or your friends that you're around. So thank goodness what we saw the Monday night, it was just perfect timing. CPR initiated, shock initiated within 2 minutes. That's what saved that young man's life. Everybody's not in that position. And I taught CPR for over 25 years, and that was the thing that I emphasized to everyone. Learn CPR because the person you may do it on is going to be a family member. Thank you for that privilege.
Thank you for that lifeline plug, being that you were involved as the EMS director for the county for 30 years plus, and we appreciate your knowledge and expertise, Mr. Leader. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Warren.
You're welcome.
All right, next up, this is a serious matter. By merit and culture, she strives and she definitely gets it done. Shout out to the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, who will celebrate 115 years. That is my mother's sorority, so I had to plug that in there. Dr. Tiffany Taylor, scheduling for instruction.
All right, good afternoon, Chairman, Board of Education. At this time, the district is presenting policy IED, scheduling for instruction, for first read. There are several recommended changes to this policy as we are looking to adopt much of the language from the state board policy for scheduling for instruction. So at this time, it is recommended that this policy be placed on first read.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Board members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns for the discussion? All right, thank you so much. Next, moving on to next item, teacher and leader effectiveness update. We'll ask that Dr. Simmons join Dr. Taylor for that update.
Okay. As that is loading, I'll begin the presentation, and then Dr. Simmons, I'm not sure if you'll join me from the microphone there.
Yes,
From
ma'am.
your seat.
So while that's loading, what Dr. Taylor is going to tell you is that she's looking forward to taking to the monthly administrative assessment that lays out her knowledge of the roadmap to success. I know that she's excited about that.
Very much, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Now that it's loaded, we'll keep going.
Okay. All right. So at this time, I will bring to you a couple of updates from the Teacher and Leader Effectiveness Division. You will hear a couple of pieces around accountability that focus on literacy and solving, two of our focus areas. This will also outline our vision for great schools and that our students graduate college and career ready. And so as we look at our roadmap to success, hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate in a way tonight, Dr. Simmons, so that I will not have to take my assessment when that comes back around. But we know that ultimately the organizational and operational efficiency, high-performing staff, the performance of our staff, support from family and community engagement, all of those lead to the results that we achieve. So to say that in another way, our performance will lead to our student achievement results. And so at this time, Dr. Simmons is going to come and talk to you about some of the accountability measures that are currently in place.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with the board, I'll take the privilege of standing because I don't get to do this often. But for members of the board, staff, guests, and those who may be online, you may or may not be familiar with the article that was posted or published in the Griffin Daily News on the 15th of December that pretty much highlighted that 4 of our schools have been designated by the Department of Education. There are a couple of things that I want you to take note of relative to this visual here. If you look at the last sentence, per the Department of Education, these findings do not indicate that the listed schools, and I'll name those in just a moment, are not improving or progressing. Let me say that again. This is not about schools not improving or progressing. This is about trend data. Okay, the 4 schools that we're talking about happens to be Ann Street Elementary School, Atkinson Elementary School, Moore Elementary School, and what's it called? A.Z. Kelsey Academy Achievement School. Not A.Z. Kelsey Academy Achievement School, but the actual school. For A.Z. Kelsey, it's about the graduation rate. So at the next venture, what I'd like to be able to do is talk to you a little bit, and then I'm going to give this back to Dr. Taylor. But I wanted you to know, if you were wondering what or how might we go about leaning into improving the performance and sustaining that improved performance of these schools, I wanted to share with you that this is going to be a collaborative approach both locally and at the state level. And when I say locally, not only here at the district office, but I also want to highlight the work and the leadership that our region, that our RISA will provide in that regard. So first things first, there will be both a district and school effectiveness specialist. Those positions will be funded by the State Department as well as RISA. The work of those individuals will be to support our efforts to ensure that there's coherence and cohesiveness regarding how the schools are led, the work that they're focusing on, and making sure that the progress is leading towards sustained improvement. Additionally, there will be an opportunity for these schools to participate or receive support from the Communities in Schools model or program. And I want to emphasize that. You know, board members, that I've been talking about a community school. Communities in School is a function of the community school, but that is not what this is, and so I want to be clear. This is not community school. This is a program, whereas a community school is a model if in of itself. I would say the difference would be like a comprehensive school and a magnet school. The third thing is a school improvement specialist that the district is providing. You're familiar with Miss Tracy Sims. You know about the work that we've done in that regard. She will continue in that work, but she will lean in particularly with these 4 schools. You'll also see additional work that the executive officer or principal supervisor, that work will continue. We've not talked a lot about strategic waivers and the flexibility in that regard. I'm going to leverage the strategic waivers to ensure that these 4 schools have the flexibility necessary, the flexibility that they desire to move and progress the school in a manner that we can sustain it. So you're going to hear me talk a little bit more about that, and here's why. 5, 6 years ago now, maybe even 7, the district submitted a strategic waiver application relative to all things in the district. What I'll share with you now is that there may be waivers that we've requested that are no longer sufficient. So we're going to work with these schools to identify the flexibility that's needed today. In the event that we need to request additional flexibility from the State Department, that will require board action, and I wanted you to be aware that this is the anchor in that regard. So we still have the application that we submitted to the State Board about the time in which you all came onto the board, but there may be instances in which we are soliciting additional flexibility to support these schools. The last thing that I'll share with you is the partnership with the University of Virginia's Public Leadership and Education program. So you know we're using ESSER funds to create systemic district-wide transformation capacity to support 3 of these 4 schools. And I wanted you to know, you may not have been clear about that when we asked your permission to to enter into that contract, but our vision before the schools were identified to acknowledge that in many ways what we're currently doing won't be enough to remove these schools from the list in the manner in which we want to do so. We're not looking for a day-long improvement. We're looking for opportunities to sustain the improvement at these schools, but also ensure that our district functions in a way that none of our schools get on any types of list in support at the state level in the future. So having said all of that, I wanted to make the connection between some decisions that you've made in the past, some decisions that I'll be asking you to make in the near future, but also making the connection between what's going on in the Teaching and Learning Division as well as with respects to the article that was posted in the community in the event that someone may not have had that context. I'll take any questions, or we can pass it over to Dr. Taylor, let her finish her presentation, and then we can go through the questions at that point. Your pleasure.
I ask that we pass it to Dr. Taylor, and then questions will be asked at the end.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So I would like to really just piggyback on the statement that was lifted in the article about our designated schools, that schools being on the designated list does not mean that those schools did not experience some improvement. In fact, at our August Principal Professional Learning Communities, several of these schools were celebrated as the XOs, Ms. Jewell in particular, went through data, student achievement data from last year to celebrate student achievement areas. We do find ourselves after kind of post the pandemic, the DOE had to go to the federal government to ask for some additional accountability waivers. And the CCRPI, as we knew it in the past, was halted during the pandemic because several of those readiness indicators were not calculated. And so on the other end of that, many of our schools, they are really just at the mercy of the way that the CCRPI is calculated. Nonetheless, at this time, I'm going to go through that accountability structure and make sure that you have information in terms of where our schools lie. And so this year, the Tier 4 CSI is a new distinction. And so you will hear me in a moment when I share a list of the entire list of all of the schools that Ann Street, due to being on the list in the 2018-19, and you see we skipped some years, and 2022 school year, kind of by default, they will remain on the list. Ann Street was showing some progress, and then the CCRPI accountability measure was halted during the pandemic. You'll see here that there are some similar supports between Tier 4 and just CSI proper. The one main difference here is that there will be a Department of Education specialist specifically for that one school that will not support the other 2 schools. Each of these schools will receive additional school improvement funding. If the schools are a CSI school, that additional funding will be $150,000. And so on the CSI list, the difference between CSI Tier 4 and CSI proper is that the Tier 4 school, Ann Street, will have to remain on that list for 3 years. They will have to remain on that list for 3 years. That's whether they make progress or not, because the Department of Education is really focusing on sustainability and not taking away either the funding, because if a school comes off of the list, they will lose that additional school improvement funding, and they will also lose the support that they receive from the DOE and from our local RESA. Next, you have the CSI alternative. Alternative is, they are the same accountability measures. However, for alternative, it is particularly tracking the graduation rate. And so here on this list, you do see a comprehensive list of all of our schools and where they fall. So Ann Street has been designated as a Tier 4 school due to their status over 3 years. Next, you see Moore and Atkinson are on the CSI list, and then AZ Kelsey is on the list for the graduation rate. you do see that Promise School, while there is, this is not a federal designation, it is a warning list at the Department of Education, and Cowan Road Middle School will be on that warning list. By way of celebrations, we would like to celebrate ORS. ORS has been on the Promise School list for several years, and due to their progress and ability to sustain those improvement efforts, we celebrate ORS tonight. They are no longer on any designation list, so we'll celebrate them. With that being said, I would like to now move into the portion of my presentation where I talk about our cognitive recommendations.
Dr. Taylor, before you go on, I
Yes.
just go back to the next. I just wanted to make sure there was no significance why Atkinson was in green and everything else is in blue. Is that any significance?
It actually is a significance. Atkinson was on the Promise list before, and so when this list was resorted, Atkinson did move to the CSI list, and I did want to indicate that was a change. So they were on a designated list, and due to their subgroup performance, that did place them in the lowest 5%, and so that was a change. Thank you for asking that question for clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Dr. Taylor, are any other schools on this list due to subgroups?
Just Atkinson.
Just Atkinson.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. And so I wanted to just keep in the forefront our cognitive recommendations. We know that we received our accreditation visit in February of last year, and it is important that remember, we closed the curriculum audit, and we talked about how we would combine those recommendations that we were still working in progress with our cognitive recommendations and also our district strategic plan. So I just wanted to provide this for you so that you can see that many of the efforts that we are embarking upon, some of the recommendations that you'll see teacher and leader effectiveness bring forward will be to satisfy some of the cognitive recommendations here. And so I really just want to state overall that we have begun the work in all of these areas and really needed to lean in just a little bit more on number 3 and number 6. While we have reviewed it and we believe that we have some efforts that are underway, those are the 2 areas that we really want to go back and just take a comprehensive look at some next steps. Those are our cognitive recommendations. Now I'm able to go into the MAP data. I want to remind you that when we look at the RIT stands for Ready for Instruction Today. And so we look at these numbers. First, I would like to call your attention to the achievement norms. On the left side, you see our fall performance for 2 years, and on the right side, you see our winter performance for 2 years. A couple of areas that I want to just draw your attention to is when we look at 3rd to 4th grade from fall of 21 to fall of 2022, that is the only area when you look at the RIT score of 190.3 where you grade level the performance was lower than the prior year, over a year. Nonetheless, if you look over at the winter scores, what you're going to see is that from fall to winter, the least growth was performed in 5th grade math and then in 7th grade math. We do notice that as our students matriculate from 1st grade to 2nd grade, you do see that our students are improving. This is important to note because we know that there were some significant gaps that were compounded by students not being in school during the pandemic. But it is promising that we see that from 1 year to the next year, our students are experiencing growth while not yet meeting the achievement norms. And what that tells us, as I move ahead to reading to talk about the reading RIT performance, is that when our students are given opportunities during instructional focus time, additional time to learn during extended learning time, some of those recommendations that you will hear us bring forward, students are able to fill in those gaps. However, time is a factor, meaning we should not expect that our students are going to fill huge gaps in short amounts of time. So given the data here, if you would not only look at it against the achievement norm, meaning where students perform like students performed at a similar point in the year throughout the nation, but if you will also look at our students from one year to the next year and one semester to the next semester, our students are making gains. We do know, and I'll close with this last slide on growth, that we have noticed that as students matriculate from elementary up to the higher grades, that there is less growth experienced. And so that does tell us where, as a teacher and leader effectiveness division, some of our focus needs to lie. And to say that in another way, we are, and I'm going to go back for a moment just to kind of point out, and in the next T&L updates, I'll have Dr. Greer come to you and give you some more specific updates on just literacy. I know that you're interested in hearing about Orton Gillingham. And so if we were to rest just for a moment to look at first grade in the winter of 21-22, and then if you would look at those first graders or first grade performance in winter of 22-23, you see that that is about an 11-point gain. And so we can see the benefits and the results of the programs that we are providing and the supports that we're giving to our teachers. However, as the curriculum becomes more rigorous, it becomes more difficult at the upper grades, we are not seeing as much growth. And so assessments such as the MAP gives the Teacher and Leader Effectiveness Division some data that we can go back and work with schools more intently with. This MAP growth chart really is just a visual of what I just shared with you in terms of growth. And I will close with just providing for you, Dr. Greer and her team, they are in the process. We have placed out instructional materials at various schools around the district as we are looking to continue to strengthen our curriculum and strengthen the instructional materials that we provide for our teachers so that they can respond to the deficits that we're seeing in student achievement. So in February, Dr. Greer will come to you. She will provide for you an update on literacy along with the instructional materials review, how that is going. We'll be able to give you an update on projected dates for the book vending machines. I want to give a shout out to Adam Pugh and also Brian Miller, Barbara Austin. They have worked very hard to get some of the graphics designed so that we can get those out to the vendor, and hopefully around March to April we'll have vending machines and big news to you to get you to come and share in that big project that we have going on. And then finally, Dr. Greer is going to come and talk to you in the near future about the new math standards. We know that we can't leave anything the same. So next year, all of our math courses will be different. And so currently they are called the GSE, Georgia Standards of Excellence. Next year they have all new names, okay? And so we will come to you and make sure that you are briefed and able to talk to the community when they start asking you questions about that new math. Are there any questions at this time?
I got a question, but now I can say to my grandkid, I don't know that that's really that new math, right? So that'll be
This is proposed, Mr. Holmes, to be new and better. But the good thing is that there's a reduction in standards, and so in most grades we're going from upwards of 20 down to about 10. I think there's no more than about 14 standards in one grade level. So the state did a review of the standards, and parents, they really said, I just can't help my child because we continue to change in this new ways of math. I can't help, and so we are looking forward to a rollback of those standards and those specific strategies and fewer standards. But we'll make sure that you all, that your questions are answered, so that you'll know what's going on with that.
Well, on the map growth, I noticed in the math in the 8th grade, and I heard what you said about everything trending down, but that 8th grade it went up. Was there an explanation on why that happened?
So let me look at 8th grade math.
Yes.
And what we see here is that on this particular chart, and I want to look back and make sure that I can answer that, because some of the charts, you have to also look at the achievement. And so the purple was the observed growth. It moved closer to what the norm was. The growth moved closer to how students actually performed as compared to those other grade levels.
And I have
you
a question.
do want those two to move together. You don't want the bar graph and the diamond to move farther apart.
Right. Okay.
So, Dr. Taylor, for what support is given for our highly qualified teachers at these designated schools?
And so at the schools, of course, we know that the executive officers have a cycle where they are providing support mainly to the principals. They have academic coaches. Much of that is determined at the school level in terms of the level of support that they need. It could be additional counselor. It could be additional behavior support. It varies from school to school based upon the population of students that they have. Some schools have added additional EIP teachers. So it really depends on the needs of those schools. The T&L team, the coordinators, they have plans of support in places. Some schools, they have new coaches, and so it may look like our T&L team going out to support the coaches. Ms. Jewell does a lot with data disaggregation to make sure that we're drilling down to the student level. There's professional learning. There's a conference coming up within the month that we take all of the principals of the designated schools, where it is a resource sharing, where they sit with other principals to glean ideas in terms of school improvement efforts. They do have additional funds. When I talk about Ms. Austin, she has worked with many of the schools. When we have not been able to provide a teacher, I won't say provide a teacher, where there are some staffing issues when it comes to extended learning. She's worked with them with FEV tutoring. That's allowing our students to have an online tutor even when they are away from the school. So there's a true menu and myriad of supports that we're offering, and that's customized. We don't want a broad brush, that they're on the designated list, because they're not all there for the same reason.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Taylor, I got one last question. I want to kind of tie this into this. Hopefully, you're the one. I know we maybe have someone that can answer it, but I have a real big concern about mental health and our SPED students. I see it increasingly becoming more of a task for our staff. Not to, be just hone in on one incident, but I just have a concern how we're servicing those students and how it affects, what we're trying to do in the classroom. We know, that can cause some disruptions and interruption of the educational process, but what are the plans? Because I think we have to be a visionary, be proactive on dealing with mental health. It's becoming more of a problem in our society, period. But, and I know we have some kids that have transferred into our district for whatever the reason, but I have a real big concern about mental health and servicing our SPED students. What's the plan to address that? And I already know the staff that we have just cannot take care of all that we have at our 18, 19 schools.
If I may, if I could just, and when we talk about mental health for staff, of course, that would be Ms. Battle's
Right.
area, and I think I have the information to share with you there, and then the other side for students. And so Ms. Battle has provided some mental health supports for our staff, and we have provided that, broadly in the event that there's a staff member that has some needs. In addition to that, we do have an EAP. And that is where staff members can reach out if they need various mental health services. On the other side, when we talk about our students, students first are served through the MTSS process, meaning that our district has had a youth mental health first aid grant for years now, and we are able to give a universal screener, not just for academics. That's what you're seeing here in this information. But on the other side of that, we also give students a universal screener for behavior. And so that is where students can not only self-identify if they have various concerns, but then also we use our data, previous discipline referrals, and the such. And our school teams, they meet monthly with the support of Dr. Greer's team and also Dr. McElroy's team, to look at the whole child, the academic and the discipline, and then come up with interventions that those students need. But I have noted that, I know you specifically said special ed, I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, probably not. Charles Kelly, I don't know if he wants to answer that tonight, but we can definitely provide you with a framework of the steps that we take around mental health, if that is what you're requesting.
Yeah, my concern is, especially with the staffing, because I know we'll have to pull from one school to service a student at another school, and that's something that, I know that can be something there to keep you awake at night, pull your hair out when you're understaffed. We are seeing more and more mental health issues. We can say it was COVID or whatever, but we're seeing more and more, from our students. And I just don't want us to be reactionary. I want us to be proactive in looking at how we service and we address mental health in servicing our SPED students. Because I know there's some innovative stuff that's out there. Some systems are doing, and I don't want us to continue doing what we're doing and not looking at making any changes to adjust to the volume of these students coming into our system.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I think Dr. Simmons has a response to that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Holmes, I think what I'll ask is that I or someone from the staff will reach out, get some specifics, provide you and the board with a detailed update relative to some of the observations that you may have, because in some ways I understand the lens and the perspective of the question, but I don't want to mitigate the importance of it by trying to rush through a response this evening. So we will give that its diligence by giving it a presentation, and we'll have a representative from whether it be Dr. Moore's department, Mr. Keller's department, the implications that it has on teaching and learning. But I'm going to ask that Ms. Battle comes into that fold as well, because in some ways what I've come to recognize is that anytime you talk about health, there's also the precedent of what you do to get healthy. And what we're seeing is the back end of unhealthiness relative to one's mental state. Right. So we got to figure out what's creating that and how might we respond to that. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So we'll give that
makes
some
sense.
time.
And like I say, I know on the healthcare side, just speaking on what I know in the state of Georgia, we decreased facilities to address mental health. It's just a vicious cycle, and I I see the same thing happening in the school system, where these people are not properly serviced. On the healthcare side, they just don't have enough facilities to send these patients, so they just get cycled through and put back in the same position they were in, which is not healthy. And these students, guess what? They may be living in a household where their parent is a mental health patient, or
Correct.
and that just trickled down, and that's why we see such a behavior problem. And you know, you've heard me say it before, man. These people that are boots on the ground at the school level dealing with these students, man, I know they go home, man, feeling beat down.
Right.
So I just don't want that to overwhelm our staff, our system, because I used to say, you know, a lot of people don't realize the magnitude of what Griffin Spalding County has to deal with. I used to think, man, I think people just bringing them to the county line and dumping them here in Spalding County. We were seeing so many, and now we're seeing that number grow and increase in our school system with these young babies, these
Right.
kids. And I just want to make sure that they get service, and I know that will help in the educational arena in the classroom if these kids are serviced instead of just and I know we have 10 days that we can only suspend them or put them out of school or whatever you want to do, and I know these teachers are just being created to stay within that boundary of those 10 days to keep the kids in school. Right. So I just want to bring that up because it's a concern, and I don't want it to go unaddressed. And I think, you know, this will help in all areas of our students' performance.
I'll make sure that the board receives a broad and detailed presentation at the next work session.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Woman Emerita.
Also, on the other end of that spectrum, Mr. Holmes, as he indicated, our parents need a lot of help too. With inflation, and, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, when I was growing up, two parents, they didn't work two jobs, they worked one job. My mother didn't go back to work till my brother got in first grade. So I hope that we could think outside the box a little bit, and as Mr. Holmes indicated, be proactive in what unique thing can we offer service-wise to our parents of the children that are so disruptive. Because every time I go into a school, I hear that every time, that it's just off the chain. And I'm not blaming anyone or anything. It is what it is, and we got to deal with it. Because again, we're talking about taking valuable teaching time away from those kids that really came to school to learn something. You know, so I hope that we can come up not only how to service the students, but we can also come up with something as how to service the parents. And I just had one question about your this chart, the map growth.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Leader Holmes, to your...
Hang on.
Ask a question.
The question I have is on the bottom one with regard to language arts and reading.
Okay.
What do you and your peers in teaching and learning attribute the big gaps in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as far as language arts and reading? When in 5th grade it was pretty good, then it goes down the hill.
A couple of things. I can definitely go back and disaggregate this and speak more specifically to this data. A lot of it, when we get to upper grades, we know that in the lower grades, K to 2, students are learning how to read. They read to learn once they're in the 3rd grade, and a lot of it boils down to student gaps for sure. If there's a gap that exists But then if there's also a gap in teacher knowledge, meaning a lack of a teacher understanding how to close that gap because we don't explicitly teach phonics and some of those other pieces in the other grade, that gap begins to widen as they get to middle school. Some things that we're doing to address that is the letters training. Remember, that is something that we came and we're taking all of our, there's a central office team, elementary principals, elementary reading coaches through this training so that they are equipped with how to close as many of those gaps, you know, by the time students leave the second grade, because typically students will not, they will never receive explicit phonics instruction again, which are skills that they so need to take into third, into fourth, fifth, and into middle school and beyond. What we see in the middle school is that you really don't have teachers who bring any training from their secondary, post-secondary institutions around reading. So some things that we have done there is that we have put in place a reading support class, not only in the middle schools, but also we are looking at some models in high school to support students there as well, and the professional learning. And then the last part that I'll just note is just that motivation to read. It's kind of like me and my diet plan. You know, I know I need to stick to it, but the more difficult it is, the less motivated I am to do it. So that is another reason that we're focusing on that Orton Gillingham and those lower grades, to give our teachers the tools that they need to close as many gaps early on so that those aren't taken forward. Doesn't mean that a kid can't read once they get to the middle grades, but they will never again be explicitly taught how to read, because that's not how the curriculum is set up.
Okay,
Those are my 2 cents.
thank you.
Y'all good, board members? Thank you so much for this robust conversation as we look at what we are doing to support our teachers, support our families, and most importantly, to support administrators and our scholars, our bosses. So thank you so much for that. At this time, we'll go on to our ARP ESSER 3 board presentation by Ms. Barbara Austin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board of Education, our own Superintendent, Dr. Simmons. It is my pleasure to come before you in efforts to provide an update of our ARP ESSER 3 funds, expenditures, and also our budget at this time. Our non-negotiables in Griffin Spalding is that we will be professional, accountable, and communicate effectively. Our focus areas are illiteracy, enrollment, attendance, discipline, and solving. Then we reach our results pyramid, where our experiences directly impact our beliefs, which then give our results and our actions. We are held accountable through the steps of accountability by seeing it, owning it, solving it, and doing it. Our vision here is that we will have a distinctive brand, strong leaders, and great schools where we empower each student to graduate college and career ready. During my report this afternoon, you will see the funding usage will touch all strategic goal areas of our organizational operational efficiency, high-performing staff, family and community engagement, as well as student achievement. And this is just a friendly reminder, I know our board has seen this infographic before, of the use of funds with ESSER 3 funding. Of course, in our application and our budget, we touch on the areas of at-risk student populations, continuity of course staff and services, supplemental learning, professional development, mental and physical health, distance and remote learning, and facilities and equipment. Also, our next slide is that the purpose of funding is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. I would like to share with the board that the intent of the funding will remain the same throughout the life of the grant. And so along the journey, we do reassess our needs within the district and our schools. But again, the intent is still around ensuring that we prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. The next chart that you see before you just gives an overview of the time frame that we've had the grant thus far, which has been since fiscal year 2021. You'll see before you the actuals and encumbrances for each year. You will see at the bottom a total of actuals to date, plus encumbrances for FY23, you will see that we have either spent and or encumbered $11,103,334.46, and that data derives from our Macular system as of 12/19/22, which gives us a usage rate or encumbered rate of 33.83%. So we have a little bit over $21 million of the grant to still spend by the end of our grant life, which is September of 2024. Okay. Sir? Okay. And so the next chart will give you more of a dig into the function areas where those expenditures are actually charged. I am excited to continue to say that we have a minimum requirement of 20% of the grant has to be utilized towards unfinished learning or the learning loss section of the grant, and we're at 43.324%. And so we continue to exceed the minimum used towards the learning loss area of the grant requirements. Okay. The next few slides that I will share will provide the board a glimpse of the resources and opportunities that your approval has provided for our schools and our district level leaders that allows our scholars to have an opportunity to be exposed to additional supplemental services within our district as well. So the very first one that you see, of course, is the robust increase of our fine arts program of $100,000. And I think throughout the district, many of you have attended a number of the performances in schools, a number of the theater offerings throughout our schools as well. So we're excited to add more money there. And so working alongside Dr. Warren and our fine arts coordinator, Ms. Wilson, they're identifying even more areas that we can spend those funds for our program. The next slide. Just to also give you a glimpse of the area of use of funds of professional development. This is just 3 of the vendors that our board has approved in the past. That just as a reminder, with Glimpse, GLISSY, and District Management Group. For example, with Glimpse, this is a tool that is a part of our effectiveness toolbox that shows us a return on investment of those resources or materials that we have purchased within the district. So that gives our board an idea moving forward as we're utilizing this more of really being able to look at apples to apples and seeing a usage rate, how is our students performing based on the resources that we're actually implementing within the schools. So GLISSY. And of course, as we envision having a distinctive brand, strong leaders, and great schools, GLISSY has provided great resources in helping our leaders to continue to expand the toolbox with the school improvement process. So we're excited about the start of that last year with the continuous school improvement process, and continue to going through with that this year, by using Assembly as our housing for the school improvement plans, whereas before we have used SLDS. And so we're very excited about the work they continue to do there. Just about done. Professional development. We continue to work alongside RESA to build the capacity of our educators and to increase instructional services endorsements within our district as well. Moving forward, we'll be able to share what some of those will be and have been as our teachers complete those endorsements. We're excited about growing our own. And there in the center, you will see that we actually have GSCS's Grow Your Own Teacher Retention Program that our board has approved, where we're able to work alongside the teachers within our schools to continue to support their growth. And so I'm excited as our HR department is very vigilant and very dedicated to these 2 programs, particularly that are funded through ESSER. And in increasing our PLC toolbox, of course, we have worked with Mr. Ken Williams in the past in that effort as well. On our next slide, you'll see some of the resources that we have utilized and have been funded through ESSER 3 with your permission for at-risk youth and closing the learning loss gap for our students. And so you'll see this iReady, the use of letters. We're certainly excited to share that all 18 schools have active extended learning time programs, whether it's before school, after school, Saturday school, or virtual school offered at all 18 schools at this time. So that is another way where we're trying to meet that personalized learning need for our students. When it was asked earlier, what are some of the things we're doing for our designated schools? This is one big strategy that we're using to be able to support and serve students where they are. So we're excited about that this year. And Dr. Taylor mentioned the use of FEV tutoring as a strategy as well. So 8 of our schools thus far is using FEV tutoring as part of their intervention toolbox to be able to serve kids during those times as well. Certainly want to give a kudos to ORS. ORS also use theirs during their regular school day to be able to help kids personalize as well. And so a number of our schools are kind of taking that same approach to serving kids. And Leader in Me, I know you all have seen all the great work that's done in those 2 schools at both Moreland and Future Road as our pilot schools this year with implementing Leader in Me, the character building program there. Yes, sir. Both high schools are utilizing FEV tutoring.
Okay. All right.
Great question.
Sure.
Okay.
Ms. Austin, I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes. Are you
Yes, ma'am.
finished? Are you finished?
Mr.
Oh,
Dawson.
go ahead, Mr. Dawson.
Hold on one second. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for that. Mr. Doss, you're recognized, and then Ms. McDonald, you'll be recognized.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The Leader in Me and that kind of thing, back on page 8 of your presentation where it has listing out, I'm looking at the other support services. Is that the type of thing that would fall, Leader in Me would fall under that, or what is under that percentage of the other support services, the 14.67%?
Okay. Back here on page 8 for other support services.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea of what that would be.
Yes, sir. That number also includes staffing here for overhead at the district level for some of those positions that support the programs in this particular area here. That's a great question, yes, sir, and we could definitely go deeper on that one.
Okay, and then also, and this may be more with this line, but for the superintendent, like Glimpsy, and I'm excited to be that we're using Glimpsy. If you could, when information is given to us that we used Glimpsy to be able to provide that information, if you can acknowledge that to us, just so that we can see some examples at times where that is helping us and that benefit of that purchase is helping us. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, and that's Glimpse.
Certainly, we can do that.
Thank
Holmes, do you have any comments?
I don't have any comments. I yield. You can recognize
Thank you so much. Ms. McDonald, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Austin, on the page where it says background, purpose of funds, guiding questions, it's up like page 4 or 5, priority areas. It
Yes,
says
ma'am.
it could be, the purpose of the funds could be its impact on social, emotional, mental health.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a lot of mental health support for parents? And, you know, I was just going through this, the FEV tutor. Is there an online mental health support we could
For parents,
for parents or students?
we have not explored that for parents, Ms. McDonald. That's a great question. The funds through ESSER 3 are dedicated to supporting students, so we certainly would have to look at some opportunities to collaborate some funds. To collaborate some funds to be able to serve parents. That's going to be us developing some of those relationships within the community as well, because the bulk of the funds that we do receive, except through Title, some of our Title funds, we're able to provide parents with information around mental health information, who to be able to go to see within the communities. We can do that type of sharing through those funds, through parent engagement and parent and stakeholder engagement.
I think that would be something, though, to investigate to see if there is an online social, emotional, mental health.
What I would love for us to do in this conversation, we greatly appreciate the discussion that we're having. If the superintendent's office and Ms. Austin's office will follow up with Ms. McDonald to see what we could possibly do to provide that support to our stakeholders, to our parents.
Yes.
Are there any other questions or discussion for this policy?
Mr. Chair, I got one last question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, leader.
With how these funds are, I guess, implemented or put into place of how they're utilized, are our staff members able to make recommendations, or is it all driven from top down?
No, sir, that's a great question. Thank you so much for that. Our staff do have the opportunity.
Ms. Alston.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Holmes, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Holmes, great question. I'll ask the board and anyone else that can hear to be reminded of our school improvement planning process and our performance reviews. If you'll remember, the school's improvement planning process is where the staff collaboratively, collectively comes up with what they believe to be the needs and the responses of both the adults and the students. What the district's role is in that regard is the facilitation. That's why we come back to you in the budgeting season. We take all of that information, we draw all of that down and try to figure out how do we prioritize. And so I think you're going to hear from Mr. Jones later on. But to simply answer your question, yes, sir, that is a school-driven process, because if you'll remember, districts don't get awarded or penalized or put on lists. Those are the schools. The function of the district is to support the school. If you've wondered or if it's been communicated that the school has no say-so, I would ask that you ask who is saying that. But our expectation is for the schools, the leadership team, the leaders of the school to collaborate, formulate a vision, cascade that vision. That's why we have the school advisory councils. That's why we have those leadership meetings, those leadership teams. So all of that work is actually, originated at the school. We try and manage and support it here at the district office.
I appreciate that answer, because I would like to be able to respond exactly like you just did. If anyone comes and, hey, you need to be going and talking with your peers at your school on the improvement council.
Correct.
And I wanted to make sure that would be the proper response, because they do have an opportunity to dialogue with things of concern that they would like to get. I just want to make sure. I'm glad I heard that.
Yes,
in
sir.
your answer.
And I appreciate the question. That's the right way to go about that, because at the end of the day, as Dr. Taylor's presentation alluded to, it said there were 4 schools within GSCS, not GSCS. And so I am not naive to the degree in which I believe that all of the knowledge lives here. The work is in the schools, and so they need to be able to have say in how that work looks. The question is whether or not we can keep up with ensuring that the work is aligned to the goals, which is aligned to the actions that they've put in those plans.
Let me do a Steve Harvey. Look right into the camera. Staff, if you have any needs, you need to talk with your school.
That is true.
Improvement council.
And I'm looking into that camera.
Looking into that camera. Okay.
Thank y'all so much. Ms. Alston, thank you so much. All right, board members, our last presentation and discussion, substitute staffing services presentation, will be done by Executive Director of Human Resources, a lady who can certainly caption a vision fair. She's also a lady of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Ms. Judy Battle.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members, and Superintendent Simmons. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on our process for the substitute staffing services. Again, Griffin Spalding County School District, we are a distinctive brand with strong leaders, and we have great schools. This work for substitute staffing services touches on PACE, our focus areas, as well as our results pyramid, and the work at the very bottom. See it, own it, solve it, and do it. Our mission and vision, we talked about a distinctive brand, but our mission in this process with substitute staffing will help to empower each student to graduate college and career ready. Our roadmap to success, anytime we talk about human capital, we touch on every one of those goals. But specifically what I want to talk to you about this evening is how this process is going to help with operational and organizational efficiency, as well as our high-performing staff. So currently, our school district utilizes 2 vendors to provide substitute staffing solutions for school nutrition workers as well as custodial workers. We use Express Employment Professionals and Kelly Services Incorporated. Our school year started, we've had a lot of conversation. We started this year with unfilled positions, teaching positions, paraprofessional positions, custodials, bus drivers. So we started off with many unfilled positions, and we quickly recognized the need to expand our substitute staffing services to include more than just school nutrition workers and custodial staff. We are in the process, we are still using long-term subs for some of our classroom positions, and we have done a really good job. Our principals have done an excellent job, our recruitment team, in filling some of those positions, but we are still using long-term subs. So this work started in the summer. We started with what we call exploratory research. We did some research to see what staffing solutions were available, and we used our research based on the findings of multiple job classifications. So again, not just school nutrition or custodials. We wanted to look at teachers, paraprofessionals, clerical support, including custodians, school nutrition, as well as bus monitors. Our research included making contact with other school districts, trying to see what other districts around us were doing, just to see what processes they were using for substitutes. We did obtain feedback from our active substitutes. We launched the survey, and then I'll show you on our next slide what some of that what that feedback looked like. We also had listening sessions, the superintendent coordinating listening sessions, and repeatedly the concerns about unfilled positions came up as part of that feedback. And we also had virtual meetings with Kelly Services. We wanted to figure out how could they improve that fill rate for us? What could they do? So we had virtual conversation with one of our current providers. And so if you look at the next slide, and I just pulled 3 questions. So one question that we did include, if given a choice, how frequently would you prefer to be paid? And you would see that our substitutes would love to be paid weekly. Currently, they're on a month-to-month pay cycle, just like other school district employees, but their preference would be to be paid more frequently. We also wanted to know, should you be given an opportunity to enroll in benefits? Currently, our substitutes that work through our school district do not have an opportunity to enroll in medical or any flexible benefits. And lastly, we were just trying to figure out the overall satisfaction. I'm not necessarily proud of that because that overall satisfaction is less than 50%. And we can do better than that. So that's just some feedback I wanted you to be aware of in terms of how we involve the active substitutes in this process. And so some of the feedback from the listening sessions, and again, thank you for allowing us that incentive for teachers who cover classes in the absence of a teacher. But the feedback told us that that incentive, it wasn't enough. They really need a body in that classroom. We also had feedback that indicated more personnel is needed in the building. We continuously heard that. And we know that the unfilled vacancies continually create hardships for faculty and staff. So that feedback also helped us move forward with our next step. So then our next step became to write an RFP, to take all this feedback and write an RFP for substitute staffing services that would meet as many of those needs as possible. And some of the things that we wrote into that RFP, one included an automatic transition for the current subs, because that was a question that I'm sure would come up. So if we already have a substitute pool, what will happen to those substitutes? Do they have to reapply? Will they be displaced? No, that was a non-negotiable for us. Our current subs would automatically get transferred over to continue to work in the school district. We also wanted to make sure that there was weekly pay. We wanted substitutes to be paid more frequently than once a month so they could work and get paid and work and get paid. Another non-negotiable for us was benefits. We wanted them to have the option, whether they enrolled in benefits or not, it would be up to the substitute, but we wanted to make that available to the substitutes. We also wrote in a non-negotiable that would provide our district with a dedicated representative on site. Someone from the company that would actually be here every day in and day out, to monitor the fill rates. If we did not have a position that was filled, they would get on the phone and help, because right now school support staff, anyone that's available, they're constantly calling for subs. So we'll have a dedicated account representative in the district. That would be their responsibility. They will also help support with rolling training. They'll, when people start to apply, get them trained and ready to go, help with that onboarding process. Another task that we expect from this representative is continuous recruitment within our community. We expect to see them at community activities, at the grocery store, so they're continuously recruiting, even school functions, to get active substitutes. And then also we look to see who could provide incentives for substitutes. Sometimes it's hard to get someone to come in, so when they're making those calls, can you offer them an incentive? Meaning, one provider said that they offer gas cards. You know, if you come on in, if you can get here in the next 40 minutes, we can give you a gas card. So those were some of the things. We really wanted to make this beneficial for the substitutes. So I communicate to you what the timeline looked like. So we started this work back in the summer, but we finished our research up in August. In September, we wrote and published the RFP. In October, we had the RFP published and shared out just for informational purposes so everyone would know what we were doing. In November, the responses were due. So we did get 6 vendors respond. We were able to use a scoring rubric to narrow the pool down, and we invited 3 vendors to come and do an in-person presentation to a selection committee. After that first presentation, we then invited those 3 vendors to do a virtual pretty much a transition plan, especially as to how it would speak to the needs of our custodial team as well as our school nutrition team, because we had some clarifying questions. And so in December, we had that second presentation. And now we are here at our next steps. It is the desire of the selection committee to bring a recommendation to the January 24th board meeting to award the RFP for substitute staffing services.
Thank you, Mrs. Battle, for your presentation. Board members, are there any discussion? Madam Chairman Emerita, you're recognized.
Is this a business? It's not one person. It's not a committee of 3. It's a business that does this.
Oh, it's a business,
Okay.
yes.
Wow.
Their business. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Battle. All right, next up we have our CFO, Mr. Byron Jones, who will present on the November 22 financial report and the FY24 budget timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, Board. This is our November 30th financial report with us meeting in January. So this is data you'll see on our balance sheet. We always report to you on the general fund, bottom yellow, 28.3 million fund reserve. That will change a little bit after our audit that was presented tonight. We'll get those final figures back and we'll tweak that. And then for the next month's report or January's report, and then the nutrition fund reserve you can see is about 2.49 million at the end of November. Page 2, this is our general fund operating statement. It basically shows you we're about 7.3 million more in expense than revenue at this point in the year. I want to remind you the tax bills were due to be paid by December 30th because of when they were sent out this year. We've already gotten documentation from Ms. Hollums. Again, this is through November. That will pick up and we'll turn that trend around in the next 2 financial reports that we show you. Third page, again, is your grants, and you can see that some of them are still on the top part waiting for DOE approval officially back to our district so we can draw down on the funds. So there are more expenses than revenue. Again, that's common this time of the year. Page 4, the nutrition operating statement through the month of November, about $650,000 to the good. Again, that's showing good results for the CEP, Community Eligibility Program. Page 5, again, is investments. About $29 million is what we're holding right now as a fiduciary. The bottom left above the yellow is some of our SPLOS funds and balances through November. You can see that the rate in the middle of the page has gone up to about 3.58%. About a year ago, it was less than 1%. So some of that's turned around on a trend basis. And page 6 is our SPLOS collections. Again, 1.161 million. We're not completely through half of the cycle yet. So again, about 30 million is what we collected to date. Any questions on the November financial report? Lonnie, if you'll pull up the calendar. Okay, board members, this document here is something a little bit different. This is basically year 3 for us doing the budget, superintendent and myself and cabinet, so we try to tweak it a little bit, keep some things the same, change a few things to keep it unique. This gives you kind of a rolling calendar that's pretty aggressive, but we're going to try to meet this tonight. First is our calendar that we're presenting, the top item. We're going to keep the next couple on work session dates. So on the February 7th, we're going to give you an outlook. And in my opinion, that's more of what information I may have from the legislative session. They went back to the legislature, I believe, this week, and I think they already set their calendar for signing a DA and the ending date. I think that's out there, so we'll be getting documentation for that. On March the 7th, budgetary overview with the priorities, our roadmap to success, any tweaks to that, any new ideas, the superintendent's vision, will be relating that to you at that date. Notice the next one, March 31st, that's the day before we go to spring break. We're going to attempt to get you your budget book that day. That's about a month and a half earlier than last year. So we're going to put a lot of work in on the front end, try to get that to you so you got more time to analyze that. April 11th, after spring break, we're going to host a public hearing, 5 o'clock p.m., prior to the board meeting at 6 o'clock p.m. I want to remind you, I tried to educate you the last couple of years, you have to have 2 public hearings before you adopt any budget. So my history has been to do that before the tentative budget's approved. So we're going to have one on that date, and then we'll come back, and on the 18th, you will have the second public hearing. We'll present the tentative budget for your approval at that 6 o'clock meeting. Then we'll run that on the website April 19th, run the ad in the Griffin Daily News on April 21st. You have to run it one time per law. Come back in here May 2nd, which is a work session, present you with the final budget, which could have some tweaks from the tentative budget. Then come back in here on May 16th, have a third public hearing, which is really one required before you do your final budget. We'll do that at 5. Ask you to adopt the final budget May 16th, and then we will post that on the website on the 24th. At that point, we're done before Memorial Day. Last year, and the tradition here is to approve those budgets in the month of June. This is highly aggressive again, so we're going to do our best to bring this home for you. This will really put us in a good position for the summer, and then we can debate when and if and when we need to have millage rate hearings, which some of that we're working with Ms. Holland's office and the assessor's office on how they provide that data and what time we get that during the spring time frame. So I try to do that as quick as I can. Is any questions on that? Again, that's our vision.
Thank you for the calendar.
All right, board members, we have heard both presentations from Mr. Jones. No questions? No discussion? All right, thank you so much. In effort of transparency, we were not able to take care of both items in executive session, so we took care of the first item was the appointment of personnel. So I am going to ask Vice Chairman Doss to make a motion for us to amend the agenda, and we'll go from there.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I do make a motion that we amend the agenda to add executive session after the information items before our adjournment. We just didn't want to keep everybody here while we were in executive session. That could be about 30 minutes or so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So what we are doing is executive session will become item 11 and adjournment will become number 12. So the motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly motioned and second and is therefore passed. We will continue with our agenda. Next item, administrative recommendations. The order of business we're taking up now will be administrative recommendations. On your agenda, it is item 9. Administrative recommendations, 9-1, Griffin High School head football coach, Mr. Clifford Fedd. Dr. Keith Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, it is my recommendation that we appoint Mr. Clifford Fedd Jr. to be head football coach at Griffin High School. Briefly, 25 years of service in education, 7 years of experience as a head football coach. Mr. Fedd currently works he's employed at Sumter County High School. He's a special education teacher by trade, gentleman after my own heart. I'm excited to make the recommendation for Mr. Fedd to be the next football coach at Griffin High School.
Thank you so much, board members. We just heard from Dr. Simmons on his recommendation of Mr. Clifford Fedd Jr. as Griffin High School head football coach. Is there any member of this body who is ready to speak to this item before the vote? Hearing none, this is an item that we must vote on. At this time, what is the pleasure of this body for the administrative recommendation of Mr. Clifford Fedd Jr. as Griffin High School head football coach? Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
It's been motioned by Holmes of the third, seconded by Doss of the second. It's been properly motioned and seconded. We are ready to call for the vote. The chairman will use his privilege to establish a roll call vote. When your name is called, please respond with your vote. McDonald.
Yes.
Holmes. Yes. Doss.
Yes.
Brown, yes. The administrative recommendation of Mr. Clifford Fedd Jr. as Griffin High School head football coach has been approved 4-0. Receiving majority of board vote is therefore passed. Administrative recommendation 9-2, superintendent recommending Alicia Pierce as principal of AZ Kelsey Academy and Achievement Center. Dr. Simmons, you're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, again, it is the recommendation for Ms. Alicia Pierce to be the next director of AZ Kelsey Academy. Ms. Pierce brings 21 years of service in education. She currently serves as assistant principal at Jackson High School, previously served in Griffin Spalding during the school years 2016 through 2018, as was the case with the head football coach. I am excited about this recommendation and look forward to having Ms. Pierce join Griffin Spalding once again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. Board members, we just heard from Dr. Simmons on his recommendation of Alicia Pierce as principal of AZ Kelsey Academy and Achievement Center. Is there any member of this body who would like to speak to this item before the vote? Hearing none, at this time, what is the pleasure of this body for the administrative recommendation of Alicia Pierce as principal of AZ Kelsey Academy and Achievement Center? Is there a motion and a second?
Motion.
It's been motioned by McDonald of the fifth.
Second.
Second by Doss of the second. It's been properly motioned and second, and we're ready to call for the vote. When your name is called, please respond with your vote. McDonald.
Yes.
Holmes. Yes. Doss.
Yes.
Brown. Yes. The administrative recommendation of Alicia Pierce as principal of AZ Kelsey Academy and Achievement Center has been approved 4-0, receiving majority board vote, and is therefore passed. Thank you. All righty, board members, information items you have in your packet: construction renovation progress summary number and the monthly facilities maintenance report. All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to do board member comments and adjournment, and then we'll go into executive session. Is there this time? Okay, correct. We have to state why we're going into executive session. So we are going to deliberate upon the periodic evaluation and rating of the superintendent. That's why we're going into executive session. Is there any board member that would like to?
Also, if you would add evaluation of personnel.
Okay, add evaluation of personnel. All right. So 2 reasons again: appointment of person, evaluation of personnel, and to deliberate upon the periodic evaluation and rating of the superintendent. Is there a motion and a second to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Doss of the second and second by McDonald of the fifth. It's been properly motioned and second. We are ready for the vote. Please raise your right hand to go into executive session. All right, that is a 4-0 vote. We will go into executive session if there are no other comments before the board.
Good.
All righty. We're in executive session. We'll be back shortly. Yes, sir. Let the record reflect, Leader Holmes has business outside of the district and will not be back when we return from executive session.